Welcome to another edition of Diplomatic Channel. I am Amarachi Ubani. Nigeria's Vice President, Professor Yemi Osinbajo, during the week said anyone involved in hate speech would be treated as a terrorist, and the speech itself would be treated as an act of terror. So what is terrorism? Or what can be regarded as a terrorist act? Oxford Dictionaries explains it as the unlawful use of violence and intimidation, especially against civilians, in the pursuit of political aims. According to International Terrorism and Security Research, it has been described variously as both a tactic and strategy, a crime and a holy duty, a justified reaction to oppression, and an inexcusable abomination. But that depends on the view it is being represented. They say it has often been an effective tactic for the weaker side in a conflict, and that as an asymmetrical form of conflict, it confers cohesive power with many of the advantages of military force at a fraction of the cost. And due to the secretive nature and small size of terrorist organizations, they often offer opponents no clear organization to depend or to deter. And according to terrorism research, that is why preemption is being considered to be so important. Terrorism spreads by propaganda. Words are spoken sometimes to instill fear in the listeners, waning hope and courage, so they don't see that they actually have the power to fight against it. If preemption is necessary to curbing terrorism, then the Vice President was right in defining hate speech as terrorism. The only difference is that terrorism already exists in Nigeria. Since 2011, the Boko Haram has terrorized northeast Nigeria. You could call them an insurgents group if you like, but they have terrorized not just the north, but have threatened to reach other parts of the country as well, and have gone beyond our borders to Cameroon and Niger. Fortunately, the Nigerian military, after a long battle with the group, has succeeded in keeping them under control. Most of the areas taken over by the group in the northeast have been reclaimed by the military, and those displaced by the insurgency can now think of going back home. Let's look beyond Nigeria. Al-Qaeda in the Islamic Maghreb has been terrorizing north of Mali, where they've destroyed UNESCO heritage sites and killed many people. It's known to be operational in Chad, Mauritania, and has cells in Libya, Nigeria, and Tunisia. The Boko Haram is said to have links to them and to Al-Shabaab militants group in Somalia and Kenya and in parts of Ethiopia. Now, beyond Africa, we've seen the activities of the Islamic State in Syria and in Iraq. Thanks to the coalition forces working with the local armies, even they are being defeated by their numbers. Sadly, there is one group of terrorists that have sprung in Europe and probably in America. They're known as homegrown terrorists. Following the teachings and instructions of radical leaders online, they carry out isolated attacks, run in vans into crowds, as we've seen in France, the UK, the United States, and now in Spain. Sometimes they plant bombs, like in Brussels, to go on rampage, stabbing anyone in sight, as they've done in France and in the UK also. The point is, terrorism is all around us. And if preemption is key to stopping these attacks, then the Vice President is right again in condemning hate speech. Everyone should condemn hate speech and any inkling towards terrorism. We'll be right back.
Syria's democratic forces say they are advancing in the city of Raqqa as they continue their assault on the Islamic State militants in the city. SDF soldiers said the fighters were advancing in the eastern side of the city and have recently captured the Mansour neighborhood, but that the evacuation of civilians was slowing their advances down. The SDF-AMN alliance, dominated by the Kurdish YPG militia and backed by US-led coalition airstrikes and special forces, have been fighting since June to clear Islamic State from Raqqa city, its de facto Syrian capital. A separate campaign drove the group from its Iraqi stronghold, Mosul, earlier this year. Syrian President Bashar al-Assad says that while his country had foiled Western desire to topple him, his army had not won defeated insurgents and the fight was continuing. During a televised address, the president said that even though there were signs of victory after 6.5 years of war, the battle continues. And, quote, where we go later and it becomes possible to talk about victory, that's a different matter. End of quote. He, however, said the assistance extended by stalwart allies Russia, Iran, and Lebanon's Hezbollah movement had enabled the army to make battlefield gains and reduce the burden of war. He said his country welcomed Russian-brokered regional ceasefire deals that Moscow is seeking to extend elsewhere in Syria, as these would end bloodshed and bring an end to insurgency and pardoning of rebels. U.S. Defense Secretary Jim Mattis says a reduction in U.S. troops taking part in a joint exercise with South Korea forces this year simply reflects a need for fewer personnel, and it's not because of tensions with North Korea. About 17,500 U.S. service members are participating in the exercise this month, down from 25,000 last year, and so says the Pentagon. But with tensions high on the Korean peninsula, China has urged the United States and South Korea to scrap the drills, as has Russia. The joint drills, called Uchi Freedom Guardian, takes place from August the 21st to the 31st and involve computer simulations designed to prepare for the unthinkable, which is war with North Korea.
North Korea knows this is a wholly defensive, for whatever they may say for public consumption, they know this is a defensive exercise. It's been going on, for decades. I mean, the name has changed over the years, but it's the same exercise that's been going on. So it's calculated to not allow for miscalculation, but this is an area where it takes I just call it a transparency that permits people to see what's going on.